Hello and welcome to the Kindle MMA full card prediction and breakdown for UFC 304 in Manchester, England. I'm going to go through the entire card in this video and break down every single fight on it and give you my prediction of who I think is going to win these fights. And a quick announcement, if you have not joined the Topology group, link in the description down below. Check out the group. You can compete against me and against other people. Submit your own picks, and in the future, you guys have a chance of winning prizes if you are the top predictor of the week. But with that being said, let's not waste any more time and let's dive right into these full card predictions. Starting off with our first fight of the night, we have Shauna Bannon versus Alice Ardelean. And if I'm being honest with you, both of these girls kind of suck. Especially Shauna Bannon in her last fight against Bruna Brasil didn't look too good. And overall, like, neither does Alice Ardelean. I mean, even her last opponent, which was Dulia Suyapa, was an 0-3 opponent that got her into the UFC almost a year ago. So I mean, you're fighting 0-3 girls in your, what is this, her 14th fight in her pro MMA career? That to me just screams like your coaches don't trust you. It just seems like you're not really ready for the big show, which is the UFC. And if I'm being honest here, women's MMA at this point doesn't really feel like a big show. It just kind of is. It kind of just is what it is. If you're just halfway decent, you're into the UFC. If you are a strawweight, a flyweight, a bantamweight even at this point. I don't really know. I don't really trust either of these girls to get a win. So I'm going to put my faith, I guess, into Shauna Bannon. I might take her by just decision. It's women's MMA. Finishes don't really happen all that often. She's the hometown person, I guess. She's from Ireland, so not really hometown, but she has some UFC experience, but it's less experience than Alice Ardelean because she has 6 fights compared to her 14. So I don't really know. This is tough. Shauna Bannon probably gonna get it done. It is what it is. We'll move on. And we'll move on to Mick Parkin versus Lukas Brzeski. I'm taking Mick Parkin here. Good old Mick Parkin. He's decent, man. For a heavyweight, he isn't anything too special. Like, I don't see him going too far into the UFC. Actually, he might go pretty far because it is heavyweight. But Mick Parkin has been proven to be a decent heavyweight at the very, very least. And Lukas Brzeski just is really, really off and on. Now, Mick Parkin is training with Tom Aspinall. I believe he's at the same gym. He's working with good heavyweights. He has shown to be a decent heavyweight, even though I was disappointed in his last fight, which was versus Muhammad Usman and against Kyle Machado. Didn't really impress me too much in those, but it's heavyweight. I can't really put too much stock into. I mean, at this point, at heavyweight, a win is what I'm trying to say here. And Lukas Brzeski, even though he did win his last fight against Walter Walker looked kind of dog shit. Let's be real here. And before that, he was like on a 3-fight losing streak to Waldo Cortez Acosta, to Carl Williams, to Martin Bidet, who is a fat heavyweight. These are not losses that I want to see from Lukas Brzeski if I want to believe that he'll beat Mick Parkin. So I'm taking Mick Parkin here. He's just really technical. Probably won't see a finish. Maybe we could, but Mick Parkin doesn't carry too much power. I'm going him by decision. Brzeski can probably make it competitive enough, but I don't see him being able to get the win over Mick Parkin in this one. But we move on to Sam Patterson versus Kiefer Crosbie. I'm taking Sam Patterson in this one. Honestly, after his Yanel Ashmouz KO, I thought he would never, ever be the same. But since then, he's moved up to welterweight. He had a really good performance against Johan Linnes, right? Yeah, it was Johan Linnes. He pretty much shut him down in the first round and then choked him out. Sam Patterson has kind of reinvigorated some hope for me for his future in the UFC. I think the move up to welterweight was good. He was way too big of a lightweight, and obviously I think his chin took a hit from that, literally, no pun intended. And I always did believe in the talent of Sam Patterson. I just always kind of worried about his chin. And Kiefer Crosbie, does he really even deserve to be in the UFC? 34 years old, from Ireland. I think his physique now has kind of taken a big hit. Used to be pretty jacked, and now he's in the UFC, not looking so jacked anymore. So he might have been on some gear, but lost to Kevin Husset. Ill, kind of an ill, but not that bad of an ill. I mean, he beat Alex Oliveira on the regional scene, which that's an older version of Alex Oliveira. 10-4. doesn't seem like he really is that good. He might just be a big name in Ireland. And the only reason he's even on this card is the fact that he is Irish. That's kind of my take when it comes to Kiefer Crosbie. I don't think he's that good. I think Sam Patterson is that good as long as his chin holds up. So I'm going to take Sam Patterson to get this one done. Leg kicks, low kicks, grappling by any means necessary. I'll say he wins by submission, another rear naked choke for Sam Patterson, probably in round 1 or 2. I'm going to say round 1 for good old Sam Patterson. He just is talented. He has good striking, good low kicks. Like overall, he is a talent. Like when you watch Sam Patterson, you see the talent. It's just the fact that he might get chinned because he has no chin. But at welterweight, he might have a chin now, so we'll see what happens. Again, he avoided the shots of Johan Linnes, who is a powerful puncher and a fast starter at welterweight, and he was able to shut him down, which I take into high consideration in this fight versus Kiefer Crosbie. So I'm going to take Sam Patterson to get this one done by first round submission. We move on up the card to Muhammad Mokaev versus Manel Kape. I'm taking Manel Kape. I think he's going to finally, I wouldn't say expose Mokaev, but finally give him his first loss in his entire pro career. Mokaev has kind of disappointed me for a little bit of time now, man. Like every single fight, it feels like he's not losing, but he has to like pull out a finish in the third round. And just that Alex Perez performance really shot down my hopes for Muhammad Mokaev. He just basically just sat in the same position. You can even argue that fight goes to Alex Perez, but overall, Mokaev just is kind of just not really there when it comes to his grappling. Like he is only 23, and I think he will improve as time goes on, but I think this might be a bit too early to be fighting Manel Kape. And I know it is flyweight. He has probably 5 fights in the UFC so far, I believe. Like he's been in the UFC for quite a while now, but I think Manel Kape overall on the feet is just going to beat up Muhammad Mokaev. Mokaev's striking is just not really that good. Again, if you watch that Perez fight, Mokaev didn't look like he was really all quite there on the feet. It seemed like he was just didn't know what he was doing, if I'm being honest with you. And it's just time and time again, whenever Mokaev fights, it's always like he wins a round, loses a round, and then he has to win in the third round, like against Jafel Filho, had to pull it out in the third round with a submission. Against Tim Elliott, had to pull it out in the third round. Against Malcolm Gordon, had to pull it out in the third round. He made Malcolm Gordon look good, and Malcolm Gordon is really not good at all. Now, maybe that Charles Johnson win is aging pretty well at this point, but I think Manel Kape is on a different league than those guys. And if you're having a tough time with Jafel Filho, Malcolm Gordon, I think Manel Kape's in a whole different realm than those fighters at flyweight. And if Manel Kape can stuff a few takedowns and keep the fight on the feet, I think he's going to expose Muhammad Mokaev and probably TKO, if I'm being honest with you. When it comes down to this fight and when I compare their opponents, I'm looking at Manel Kape fight David Dvorak. I'm looking at him fight Zhalgas Zhumagulov and smoke him. I'm looking at him fight Ode Osborne and smoke him. Where Mokaev is fighting, I think, fighters that are on a similar level to what Manel Kape has fought in the UFC so far, and he's having a tough time with them. Or if Manel Kape fought Malcolm Gordon, it's a first round KO from Manel Kape. It's easy, light work. If he fought Jafel Filho, might be a bit tough for him in the first round, but I think in the second round, he would smoke Jafel Filho. I honestly think that if Manel Kape fought Alex Perez, he would smoke him. I think he would easily beat Alex Perez. Now, obviously, Perez is hurt right now. I think we tore his ACL in his last fight against Tatsuro Taira, but if he was healthy before that fight and it was Manel Kape instead of Taira, I think Kape would have smoked him. I just think this fight, when it comes down to it on the feet, it is a mismatch for Muhammad Mokaev. I think he'll get pretty badly pieced up by Manel Kape, and Manel Kape's opponents in the UFC so far, I think, have been way better than what Mokaev has fought so far. I mean, the worst loss, I guess, for Manel Kape in the UFC so far is that Matheus Nicolau fight, which I think he won. I think he was robbed in that matchup. And then I do believe Manel Kape has a loss over Pantoja, which is now the flyweight champion. So not a bad loss. So I think Manel Kape's going to go out there, going to stuff the takedowns of Mokaev, and on the feet, he's pretty much going to whoop his ass. So Manel Kape, I'll say by second round TKO. I think the first round will be a bit tough for Manel Kape, stuffing the takedowns. Then he'll come out in the second round and he'll find a way to hurt or chin Mokaev. But we move on up the card to Oban Elliot versus Preston Parsons. Now, I'm probably going to take Preston Parsons in this one only because I think the grappling does cancel out. I think Oban and Preston have an equal level of grappling. So I think this fight will probably take place on the feet. And when I watch Oban Elliot on the feet, it really does worry me. His chin, his recovery is good, but his chin is pretty lacking. And I think almost getting chinned by Val Woodburn, who probably shouldn't have ever been in the UFC, is pretty ill. It's pretty stinky. So I don't like the fact that Oban Elliot is consistently getting hurt in his fights. Even on the Contender Series, I believe he got hurt, but that guy was kind of a big dude. He was a threat, if I'm being honest with you. But again, Oban Elliot is consistently getting hurt in his last 2 fights, and it doesn't seem like his striking is really all the way there. Like, he isn't the worst striker I've ever seen. I've definitely seen worse strikers than Oban Elliot, but he's not good. And Preston Parsons, to be fair, isn't like spectacular in his own right, but I think he's more suited to fight on the feet than Oban Elliot. I mean, it's pretty clear to me, if you can survive Matthew Semelsberger and not get hurt by him, because he always hurts his opponents, but he always fumbles the finish. But Parsons was able to not get hurt by Matthew Semelsberger, and that to me speaks volumes, where I think Oban Elliot at some point would get dropped by Matthew Semelsberger. But he was able to sit there, out-grapple Semelsberger for 3 rounds. His UFC debut was against D-Rod, which he didn't look too bad in that matchup, even though he did get KO'd or TKO'd. It was on short notice against D-Rod in his UFC debut. I won't put too much stock into that. I think Preston Parsons overall has looked decent. It's like just decent. Not like a world beater or anything, but I think he's good enough to probably edge one out versus Oban Elliot. Now, again, I do think the grappling will cancel out each other. And just when I compare these two on the feet, I think Preston Parsons is better. And I think he'll find a way to get the job done, probably by decision. I don't see Parsons finishing Oban Elliot. He's just too tough. His recovery is just way too good. But we move on up the card to Modestas Bukauskas versus Marcin Prachnio. And this one, to me, I think is pretty easy of a pick. I'm taking Marcin Prachnio by decision. Just that I feel like this is a nightmare style for Bukauskas here. Like, I don't understand. Now, I do understand why, but I just feel like Bukauskas is just a at-range kind of guy, not much power in his hands. And I feel like to beat Marcin Prachnio, you have to have a more aggressive style and be able to take him down or chin him at the very least. And I don't think Modestas really carries any of those qualities to beat Marcin Prachnio. And Prachnio in his last fight against Devin Clark, he looked like really good. He looked pretty decent. I don't think Prachnio was really all that good, but I mean, Bukauskas is a good story. You know, he fought Khalil Roundtree, had his whole knee pretty much destroyed by him, then went to Cage Warriors, went on a win streak, made his way back into the UFC, but losing to Vitor Petrino, not a bad loss, but by KO, tells me like maybe his range management might not be all the way there. And I think Prachnio, with his body kick and the way he strikes, is going to be able to stay at range and just kind of pick apart Bukauskas. I don't know. It's a pretty simple pick. We'll see how Bukauskas does. I am rooting for him. I like his story. I like how he was cut from the UFC and then made his way back to the UFC. But I think Prachnio is going to body kick the fuck out of him. But moving on up the card again, we have Caolan Loughran versus Jake Hadley. And this one, again, I think is a pretty simple pick. I'm going to take Caolan Loughran and get this one done by decision. I think Jake Hadley is just a bit too small for bantamweight. And it seems like when Jake Hadley really fights these wet blanket grapplers, these guys who can have good half guard, full guard control over him, he just kind of loses. Like, Jake Hadley's good. I like Jake Hadley. I like that he got an omoplata on the regional scene. Like, he is a technical grappler, but it feels like when somebody can just lay on top of him, he doesn't really offer too much in the get-ups and in the submission attempts. Like when he fought Cody Durden, Durden was able to have top control pretty easily. When he fought Alan Nascimento, even though he is good, Alan Nascimento is, again, it's the same thing with the Cody Durden fight, just was able to lay on top of him for 3 rounds. It just feels like Jake Hadley, when he's on bottom against a bigger guy, he just really struggles. Pause. I don't think Caolan Loughran is anything too crazy. Like, he lost to Taylor Lapulus, but that was a pure striker who was picking at him at range. He was a bit too small and compact for Taylor Lapulus, but I think he'll be able to find a way to get Jake Hadley down at some point and just lay on top of him for 3 rounds, probably in a boring style. I'm taking Caolan Loughran by decision. But we go on to the next fight, and that is Molly McCann versus Bruna Brasil. I'm going to take Molly McCann, and I pray to the MMA gods. She does not let me down again. McCann, she moved down to strawweight. She's definitely in shape now, lost all that fat. Fighting Bruna Brasil, who is, I think, the epitome of mid in the women's division. I think Molly McCann can get this one done with her aggressive style. Again, grappling is her kind of her kryptonite at this point, but I don't think Bruna Brasil is going to have too much success in the grappling. And I think Molly McCann can just, I guess, meatball her way to a victory versus Bruna Brasil. I guess in hindsight, for Molly McCann, losing to Erin Blanchfield isn't too bad of a loss. I mean, it is Erin Blanchfield. She's like from that 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu gym. She's really good in the Jiu-Jitsu. So I guess losing to her isn't like the biggest like, fuck, you know. But losing to Stoliarenko was pretty bad of a loss. But I think down at strawweight now, she has more of a weight advantage. I think that she could maybe come out in this one and just muscle her way through Bruna Brasil, who can be kind of muscled through. I mean, Luma Look Boom was able to pretty much impose her will to be Lucas Tracy for a second against her, and she's like a really, really undersized. So I think if Luma Look Boom can do that, I think Molly McCann can do it as well, even though I do believe Luma Look Boom is better than Molly McCann. I don't know, I'm just not really impressed with Bruna Brasil. The same thing goes for Molly McCann, but I think she's back in the UK. I think she'll be hyped up for this fight. Another Patty card. I think she'll be ready for Bruna Brasil. I think she'll get this one done probably by decision, maybe by finish, but I'm going to say decision just to be safe. But we move on to our next fight, and that is Nathaniel Wood versus Daniel Pineda. Now, I am a really, really big Nathaniel Wood enjoyer. I do like Nathaniel Wood. I wish he would go back down to bantamweight. I think he's a bit too undersized for featherweight, but overall, he just is a technical monster. Like, he is a really, really good striker. But when he fought Naimov pretty much cheated his way to a win. And before that, Wood was looking pretty good. Like, when he fought Andre Philly, did get dropped a few times by Philly, which is kind of disappointing, but was able to tough through that and actually hurt Philly at moments. Was able to dismantle Charles Jourdain, was able to dismantle Charles Rosa pretty easily. And Daniel Pineda kind of sucks, man. Like, he has moments where he's decent, but the main thing about Daniel Pineda is his low kicks. And I think Nathaniel Wood's low kicks are just way better than Pineda's. And I think when it comes down to the leg kick battle, I think Nathaniel Wood will win that battle. And I think if that's the case, that's really all Pineda really offers is the low kicks. And I think Wood pretty much gets this done with relative ease, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, Daniel Pineda now is 38 years old, lost to Cub Swanson, lost to Alex Caceres, got eye poked by Andre Philly, had some tough moments against Tucker Lutz. Like, I think Nathaniel Wood is better than all of those guys right now. So I'm going to take Nathaniel Wood to beat up Pineda's legs and probably finish him at some point. Maybe get a decision, honestly. It is Nathaniel Wood. Doesn't really get too many finishes, especially at featherweight now, but I think he'll be able to outclass Daniel Pineda. But we move on to Arnold Allen versus Giga Chikadze. I'm going to take Arnold Allen here. Arnold Allen, I think, is really good still. I know he lost his last two fights. I know he lost to Max Holloway, which is a good loss to have now. I know he lost to Movsar Evloev, which, if that knee rule got fucking changed, he probably would have finished Movsar Evloev, but it's such a stupid rule. The one hand down is dumb. I believe they changed it, but Arnold Allen is good on the feet. Chikadze has looked kind of mid to me recently. When he fought Alex Caceres, even though he did win that fight, he looked pretty mid to me, if I'm being honest with you. And he got pretty much dismantled by Calvin Kattar. And I think if I kind of do some MMA math here, if you compare Arnold Allen's loss to Max Holloway, who dismantled Calvin Kattar, Arnold Allen had a pretty good performance versus Max Holloway. He lost, but it was very competitive. And Chikadze pretty much got dismantled by Calvin Kattar. So if we do some little string pulling here, or some little, I guess, coping, I don't know what to call it, but Arnold Allen had faced tougher competition against Max Holloway and looked good, whereas Max Holloway, you know what I fucking mean. You know what I'm talking about. Chikadze just is losing pretty convincingly to the lower end of featherweight at this point. I think Calvin Kattar at this point in his career and his age is at the lower end of the rankings and featherweight right now. And I think Arnold Allen is still young in his prime. I think he's good. I think he might grapple against Chikadze as well. I think Arnold Allen overall is going to be a bit faster than Chikadze, a bit more explosive than Chikadze as well. I think Chikadze at this point in his career, he's also aging 35 years old at featherweight. Not a good time for Chikadze to go on a run, if I'm being honest with you. I think Arnold Allen gets this one done. I think on the feet, he is somewhat comparable to Chikadze. I think on the ground, I think he can definitely out-grapple him because Chikadze got out-grappled by Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar is a pure boxer. So if Calvin Kattar can out-grapple Chikadze, I think Arnold Allen can do the same thing if it does go for takedowns. And on the feet, I think if Chikadze is having a tough fight with Alex Caceres, I think Allen is way, way better than Caceres. I think he'll be able to land shots on him as well. I just think on the feet and on the ground, I think Allen has the advantage, even if it is a little bit on the feet. So I'm going to take Arnold Allen probably by decision. This might be a really shitty card. I think all the fights I've predicted so far have been decision besides maybe one or two. But I think Allen gets it done by decision. I think he finds a way to dismantle Chikadze on the feet and then take him down at moments and wet blanket him. And with that being said, we move on up the main card to Christian Leroy Duncan, CLD, the man himself, versus Gregory Rodriguez, aka Obama. Now, in my opinion, this fight is as 50-50 as it could possibly get. You could pick either guy and I wouldn't really care. I think there's a good argument for both, but in my opinion, I'm going to take CLD to get this one done. I think he's a bit just too dynamic. And I think on the outside, I think CLD will be able to find ways to pick at Gregory Rodriguez. And honestly, I think after that CLD loss to Armen Petrosyan, I think he kind of learned to just tone it down just a little bit. But I think the elbows and the clinch, I think the overall dynamic style of CLD will be able to frustrate Gregory Rodriguez. I think at some point during this fight, I think we'll see CLD cut open Rodriguez. I just think overall, his dynamic style is going to overload the brain of Rodriguez. And I think Rodriguez has a really solid chance in this one. Don't get me wrong. Like, he is very good. He is very powerful. But I think just the reach advantage of CLD and the way that he throws kicks and the way that he does spinning attacks and his elbows and his footwork just will be a little bit too much for Obama, because Obama is kind of a simple style. Like, he just walks forward, throws 1-2s, throws hooks, very powerful dude, tries to impose his will, try to outmuscle you, try to be the bigger dude in the octagon. But I think with CLD, I think he'll be able to utilize his footwork to kind of work around that simple style. And maybe you can argue that Obama might catch CLD at one point. I'm using their nicknames because their names are so hard for me to pronounce. So maybe Obama could catch CLD lacking at some point and put him down and KO him. It is possible, but I just think CLD might be a little bit too good. I think he learned from his last fight or 3 fights ago from Petrosyan just to not be a little bit too extra and just kind of make things more simple and try to just land shots when you need to and stay at range and just be smart with your approach. And I think he showed that with Claudio Ribeiro and against Dennis Tululan. Maybe Rodriguez could go out there and maybe out-grapple CLD, because Petrosyan did take down CLD at one point. So it seems like CLD's defense or grappling defense might not be the most elite. So that could be a possibility for Obama to just take down CLD and just make it boring for 3 rounds. But I don't think that's kind of his style. Like, I think Obama here just wants to go out there and bang and just get a KO in front of a crowd. I think he might fall into the trap of, you know what, let's just go out there and have a fun fight. I'm 32 years old, probably not going to be champion. I want to make money. I want to get a bonus. So with this guy who also strikes and probably won't try to take me down, let's go out there and just bang and see if I can get a KO and get a finish and get a performance bonus. So yeah, maybe you could argue that Obama could go out there and grapple up CLD, but I don't think he will. I think he'll want to go out there and have a fun fight on the feet. I think if this fight only takes place on the feet, I think CLD will be able to get it done, probably by decision again. So many decisions for me today. But we move on to the feature fight between Bobby/King, or now King Green versus Paddy Pimblett. Now, in the build up to this fight, I was always saying I think Bobby Green just pieces up Paddy Pimblett for 3 rounds, just embarrasses him on the feet. But I always mentioned how I felt, or I had this gut feeling that I could just see Paddy Pimblett just finding a way to choke out Bobby Green and then twerk on his lifeless body after he gets done with him. And now that I'm sitting here today, I just still can't shake that feeling. There's something about Paddy Pimblett tells me he's going to find a way to grapple up Bobby Green, take his back, put in the rear naked choke, and just submit him unconscious. Like, I just see Paddy Pimblett winning this fight no matter what I really do or think. It just, Bobby Green has always had an issue with grapplers. When he fought Islam, when he fought people who just go for takedowns on him, he always seems to just lay back on the striking and on the boxing. And if his opponent is not trying to pressure him, Bobby Green's output just seems really kind of low, if I'm being honest with you. I'm just really worried about the grappling threat when it comes to Bobby Green versus Paddy Pimblett. And I think I'm going to take Paddy Pimblett by submission in the second round. I think we're going to see Paddy find a way to stay safe on the feet, and just maybe he might get outboxed a little bit, but I think when it comes down to the grappling, I think he'll find a way to get to Bobby Green's back and put in the body triangle, because he is really underrated in that area. I know Paddy Pimblett, he lost to Jared Gordon, but Jared Gordon was having some success against Bobby Green as well. Like, at one point, I thought Bobby Green was going to lose to Jared Gordon. And if you watched any of Paddy Pimblett's regional fights on Cage Warriors, he's really good when it comes to jiu-jitsu. He is a really good jiu-jitsu practitioner. Like, I think Paddy's going to find a way to just get onto Bobby Green's back. Maybe when it comes to Bobby Green trying to stuff a takedown, maybe Paddy Pimblett chain wrestles a little bit and finds a way to get to that back. I think Bobby Green might be a little bit, I wouldn't say scared to strike, but he might be too worried about the takedown threat to really let his hands go. And I think Pimblett, as weird and probably bad as this is to say, I think Paddy is a little bit underrated when it comes to his power. Like, he has power in his hands. Now, his technique and his defense when it comes to striking is absolutely abysmal, but he still has some power in his hands. And Bobby Green has been, I think, dropped in almost every single fight in his past like 5 fights. Like against Jim Miller, got dropped. Off balance, it was kind of, I think he kind of got dropped. Against Jalen Turner, got almost murdered by Jalen Turner. That was ridiculous of a stoppage. Super, super late. Grant Dawson, okay, yeah, that was a quick fight. Tony Ferguson even dropped Bobby Green at one point. So I think if that version of Tony Ferguson can drop Bobby Green, I think a young, hungry, powerful, big Paddy Pimblett can also find a way to maybe hurt Bobby Green on the feet, take his back, and then choke him out. So I'm going to take Paddy Pimblett by submission in the second round to get it done over Bobby Green. Bobby Green can still win this. If Pimblett can't get any takedowns, then I think Bobby Green just pieces him up for 3 rounds and probably finishes him. But I think Paddy Pimblett won't pressure him. Bobby Green, of course, is a counter striker. He wants you to come forward versus him. I think Paddy will be on the outside for the majority of this fight. I think he'll find ways to land punches on Bobby Green's chin, however ugly they may be. And I think if he ever catches Bobby Green lacking at any moment, I think he gets the back, puts in the body triangle, rear naked choke, fight's over. Paddy Pimblett by second round submission, and then he twerks on his face afterwards. But we move on to the co-main event of Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blaydes 2. Listen, Tom Aspinall is better than Curtis Blaydes in every single facet. I think even in the grappling, of course, the striking, I think the speed, I think the footwork, I think overall, Tom Aspinall is just outright better than Curtis Blaydes. And if you want to bring up their first fight, I don't care. That fight lasted like 30 seconds and like there was no punches landed by Curtis Blaydes at all. He was aggressive and maybe there were moments where he could have landed on Tom Aspinall's chin, but he didn't. It was a fluke injury. It is what it is. I just think overall Tom Aspinall is just way better than Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes he pretty much did get ragdolled by Gelton Almeida. I think if Gelton Almeida can do that to Curtis Blaydes, I think Tom Aspinall can do similar grappling exchanges to Curtis Blaydes. I think we're going to see Tom Aspinall go out here and probably, I don't want to say abuse Curtis Blaydes, but I think he'll go out here and just make quick work of Curtis Blaydes, if I'm being honest with you. Curtis Blaydes has been a pretty decent heavyweight now. Like, he has proven that he is a top 5 heavyweight. And for as long as that fight lasted between Blaydes and Pavlovich, Blaydes, he did pretty well. He lasted longer than most people, which he still ended up getting TKO'd in the first round. But Tom Aspinall smoked Pavlovich in the first round. It's just, I think there's a different level of skill between these two. I think Tom Aspinall carries the majority of that skill, almost all of it, if I'm being honest with you. Blaydes, not bad. Like, I think he still can beat some heavyweights, but I think Tom Aspinall is a different level of heavyweight. I don't think Blaydes will be able to be successful in the grappling nor the striking. I think when it comes down to just speed, Tom Aspinall was way faster. I think he'll beat Blaydes to the punch every single time with a 1-2. When it comes down to power, I think Tom Aspinall is definitely more powerful than Curtis Blaydes. The only thing I am worried about is that maybe Blaydes can land just one punch. We haven't really seen Tom Aspinall's chin really ever be tested in the UFC. I believe one time on the regional scene, Tom Aspinall did mention that he did get hurt or dropped at one point, but that was one time, and we haven't really ever seen that video of that happening. So there's really no evidence ever of Tom Aspinall really ever having a bad chin. Because, like, when you look at these fighters like Tom Aspinall, when they look so perfect with their striking, their technique, and their size and their speed, like, there's always a catch. There's always a downside. Like with Khamzat Chimaev, right? When he was making his debut and he had his first few fights in the UFC, it's like, okay, what is the catch with Chimaev? He is powerful. He has really good grappling. He finishes everybody in the first round. He's dominant. What is the weakness of Khamzat Chimaev? Turns out it's his cardio. And so the same thing can be said about Tom Aspinall. What is Tom Aspinall's weakness? He's looked so dominant and so good in all of his fights in the UFC so far. What is Tom Aspinall's weakness? And that maybe could be his chin, and maybe Curtis Blaydes could expose that. But am I betting on that? No, I just think Tom Aspinall is the way better fighter than Curtis Blaydes. But I think Tom Aspinall gets this one done by first round KO. I think he actually puts out Curtis Blaydes completely out cold, similar to how Derek Lewis did, but not with an uppercut. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I am taking Tom Aspinall by first round KO/TKO versus Curtis Blaydes. We move on to our final fight of the night, our main event, Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad 2. Now, here's the deal when it comes to Edwards. I think Edwards is going to be way more prepared for this fight than pretty much any other fight that he has had so far in his championship reign. Edwards has been training grappling, drilling takedown defense for the past, 4 or 5 fights so far into his UFC career, or into his championship reign. I mean, look at how many grapplers Edwards has fought in his past 5 fights. Like, he fought Colby Covington, grappler. He fought Kamaru Usman twice. He fought Nate Diaz, whatever. He fought Belal Muhammad. Like, he has been training grappling defense for a long time now. Like, he's been working on that part of his game for such a long time. And the only way Belal, I think, beats Edwards is by pressuring him, taking him down, and just wearing him out throughout 5 rounds. And I don't think he's going to have too much success in being able to out-grapple Edwards at all. I just think Edwards will be way too prepared for the grappling of Belal Muhammad. And let's be real here, Belal is not chinning Edwards. It's not going to happen. I don't see Belal ever being able to find a punch that can really knock out Edwards. Please, God, please, MMA lords, don't let that happen. I'm going to vomit if we see Belal Muhammad get a 1-punch KO knockout versus Edwards. I would legit actually probably break my monitor if that happened. But, I mean, let's be real here. Belal fought a one-armed Gilbert Burns and still couldn't do that much to him. He just really doesn't do much on the feet at all. And if Edwards is out here stuffing takedowns, then I think Belal's in a pretty rough spot versus Edwards. And Edwards, yeah, like, he's also boring as well, but he does have a good striking style. Like, he is a very educated striker. His team now is huge. Like, I think Edwards has been training his ass off. I think he's been preparing his ass off for the longest time now. I think his gym is blown up in popularity. Like, I think at this point in Edwards' career, I think he's looking towards building a legacy with all of the I guess, accessories, or not accessories, but all of the advantages that he has built up for himself. I think Edwards gets this done fairly easily versus Belal. Belal can get it done. Like, he could go out there, maybe get a few takedowns versus Leon, just pressure him the entire time, gas him out, make him quit. But I think Edwards has evolved since. I think he's always been better than Usman, is what I'm trying to say. I think Edwards was always better than Kamaru Usman. And I know that first fight didn't really tell you so, but that was an elevation. That was not a C-level Leon Edwards, and he was gassing out because he was in, Utah. And I think that he proved that he was better than Usman when he fought him the second time in the rematch. And I think the way he dismantled Colby Covington, however boring it was a fairly easy fight for Edwards. He was stuffing takedowns. He was getting up. He was scrambling around. I think overall Edwards' grappling defense has improved a ton over the past, 2-3 years. And Belal, like, yeah, he's good, but Belal just doesn't really do anything that is too threatening to Leon. I don't think like he's going to go out there and be able to really put any fear into Leon Edwards at all. And even in their first fight with each other, like, Leon was able to hurt Belal at one moment, and he was like overall just kind of piecing up Belal the entire time. I know it ended in an eye poke, but I think Edwards was pretty much in control of that fight the entire time that it lasted. And I think Belal, I think he might be a little bit nervous for this fight. I don't think Belal is going to be fully confident that he can beat Leon Edwards. Now, obviously, I think he does think that he can win versus Edwards, but I think when you're not fully confident you can beat someone, I think with Belal, if that is not his mindset that he can go out there and destroy this guy, I think he lends himself to having a worse performance. I think versus Edwards, I think he'll be a little bit too nervous. Like, this is the huge moment for Belal. This is everything that he's been training for up to this moment is meant to beat Leon Edwards. And I think the pressure might get to him at one point. And so with all of this pressure on Belal Muhammad, I think he's going to get KO'd by Leon Edwards in the first round. Really, really embarrassing. I think all of this trash talk, all of this fake confidence from Belal is all going to just tumble down and have probably the most embarrassing moment of his entire career or even life to go that far. I think he'll get KO'd in the first round, not by a head kick, but I think by a punch by Leon. I think a really good counter shot from Leon is coming to Belal's way, and I think he'll chin him, and I think Belal will be out cold on the ground and then get up and start crying because he lost his moment. Like, I can just see Belal having a really bad mental breakdown after losing this fight. I don't see it any other way. Maybe it could be a decision, obviously. Maybe you could see just Leon just outpointing Belal for 5 rounds. It is possible, but I really feel like Belal is going to probably try to leave it all out there and go out on his shield. I think he will try to finish Leon Edwards. I think he wants to have a really good performance. Again, like, everybody pretty much talks trash on Belal, saying like he's boring, never gets any finishes. And I think Belal is going to want to come out here and try to make a statement versus Leon and pay the big price for it. So I'm taking Leon Edwards by first round KO, a surprising one that nobody will expect, and we'll see Belal have a really bad mental breakdown at the end of the fight. So that is my full card predictions and breakdown. If you guys enjoyed this, if you disagree or agree with my picks, let me know in the comment section down below. But I'm out of here, guys. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon for notifications. I'll see y'all later. Peace.